New Wave Community Media.
Before we start, a note to our listeners. The content of this podcast is based on our opinions and experiences. While New Wave Community Media strives to offer valuable insights and information, we are not medical or professional advisors. Any advice or suggestions presented here should not be considered a substitute for seeking guidance from qualified professionals. We encourage you to consult with appropriate experts regarding any specific concerns or issues you may have. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the podcast. The more screen time you consume on your device, the more revenue big tech can make. So, your health, your well-being, your sanity, and your serenity are nowhere close to their priorities. That's why your health is in your hands. Your serenity is in your hands. Your sanity is in your hands. Abhijit Maskur, author and neuroscientist. From New Wave Community Media in Oakland, California, I'm Jen K. Ward, and this is the Digital Sanity Podcast, dedicated to helping you be online without losing your mind. Hello, welcome back. I'm with one of my favorite people, Eddie Shieh. His journey from designing in the high-stakes Bay Area tech scene to helping people identify their greater significance and true purpose provides a really unique perspective on balancing technology with mental well-being. Hi, Eddie. Tell us who you are.
So my name is Eddie. I am part career coach, focusing on helping burned out overachievers figure out, how they want to relate to work and money and life. And also a part-time UX design educator, working at community college and teaching a very diverse student body about design, human-centered design, and hopefully helping them step into a new career that they find fulfilling. And I'm also a dad to 2 young kids, 2 and 5, and that is a huge part of my day-to-day life as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Let's see. And I think a lot of people don't know what UX means. And when you say UX design or UX writing, they're like, huh? What is that? And I say, well, it's user experience, essentially. They say, huh? What? I say, well, it's the experience you have, for example, using an app. The UX designer designs apps. They're like, huh? Can you explain to the audience, what's UX? What's UX?
Yeah, so the way I define UX, and there are many definitions out there. If you try to Google it, you won't get a single definitive answer that everybody agrees on. But the way I think about it is it's the experience that somebody has when they interact with a product or a service or a business that helps them achieve a goal or a task that they want to achieve. So that right now is in the form mostly of digital interfaces and digital products, but in theory, UX can apply to non-digital products as well. But in general, when we say UX these days, it really does only relate to digital products and services. And that's why of the UX curriculum that I teach, and also most of the job titles that say UX design, are for digital interface design.
We met at a place in San Francisco called General Assembly. And what it is it's a learning environment, learning community.
Yeah.
And so I decided I'm a, copywriter by trade. And so I thought I want to learn how to do UX writing, which is essentially writing for apps.
Yeah.
But when you write for an app, it's much more complicated than just writing. And it's a certain writing format that's incredibly brief because it's an app. And I thought, well, before I even go into learning exactly how to do that, I want to know from the ground up, how do you design an app?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really where I need to start. So I signed up for your class. And from the moment that you stood in front of us and shared who you are and some of your life, I felt, and I believe the others in the class also felt, that we could trust you, that we could be open to failure.
Yeah.
Which is a really good thing. And especially among, like professionals, feel like we have to feel like we have to get everything exactly right because it's part of our job,
Right.
I really felt so much more at ease. And the other factor for me was I was the oldest person in the class. Because I've always felt that age doesn't have a lot to do with being relevant.
Right.
You can be young and not have a lot of relevant skills or ideas. So, I defy ageism, not aging, but ageism.
Yeah.
What I found in taking your class, at first I was so nervous because everybody around me seemed to be a millennial, right?
Uh-huh.
I came in like, am I going to hate these people because that's what the media has told me to do, right? And I went in and everybody was so nice, and you started everybody off on such a great foot, and we got to be on teams together, and I learned from the younger people, and they learned from me, and it was just amazing. So anyway, that's how we met, Eddie, and I just think you're one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, and the most kind-hearted and centered people. And I think that makes you a very good teacher, and I would imagine an amazing coach. And I also took another short class of yours during COVID, because that UX design class happened before COVID. So
right.
COVID, I took that workshop that you gave on getting things done without shame.
Right. Yep.
Oh boy, that was so amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's it's a really valuable approach toward staying balanced, and especially in a world where the focus is on being a human doing rather than being a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell the audience or can you tell us a little bit about that workshop?
Yeah. It's been a while. So, but yeah, the premise of it was shifting the way of setting goals away from the outcome to defining the process. And by changing your goals from outcome goals to process goals, you're much more able to see your success in that. So, for example, if you had a writing goal, and instead of the outcome being like, I'm going to write a bestseller, and that's my goal, and therefore, if it's not a bestseller, which honestly you don't have control over, I'm a failure. But if you turn them into process goals, it's like, I'm going to write for 2 hours a day for 5 days a week for the next 6 months. Then every day, as long as you do the writing for 2 hours, you have succeeded in your goal. So that reframe is to help with changing your mindset from setting your goal to be things that you can't control to setting goals to be things that you absolutely can control. You can control if you sit down and write for 2 hours. You can't control if you get, if you even get your book published, right? So then with the shame, it's like, I'm very familiar with shame being a driver of behavior because of my own cultural background and my own, upbringing. And honestly, it's quite effective to motivate a child or a young person to be better is by shaming them or by scolding them, right? It helps. It actually really does work. Now, however, when you become an adult and you no longer have people around you shaming you, scolding you, it becomes an internalized engine where now you have to shame and scold yourself. However, that doesn't have the same effect. It doesn't, it kind of gets in the way. It starts to turn into a self-sabotage pattern where you're shaming, scolding yourself. The motivation of that becomes less and less potent. And then you have to shame and scold yourself even more. Your motivation goes down even more. And then what started as a incentivized cycle of like shame equals productivity, it now becomes a vicious cycle of like shame equals demotivation, shame equals stuckness, shame equals no motivation to do anything. So shame is not a viable energy source for your life. It doesn't actually yield you with the energy or the productivity for you to sustain things that you want to do in your adult life. And when we become adults, we start to care about things that maybe people around us don't care about. And that's okay. And we should be able to generate the energy within us to be productive towards those goals, even without other people's approval or disapproval. So to me, it's really marrying those two frameworks together and seeing if there's a way to set goals, achieve goals, using a different energy source than shame by measuring our success based on things that we can control.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. It really, really did have an impact on how I get things done. And we did something really interesting. You asked us, the people in the workshop, to sort of give that nagging voice a name. So I think I called mine like Gladys Kravitz or something, like the busybody. And to ask that voice, how are you trying to protect me? What are you trying to tell me? And maybe, that thing of like, you can't ever get anything done, and on time, you never are good at follow through. Like, well, okay, Gladys, what are you really trying to say? How are you trying to protect me? Well, I want you to be sure just to turn this in on time, because that would be good for you and everybody else who's involved in whatever the project is, right? It's like, okay, got it. Okay, thanks. I'm really glad you have my back that way. And okay, great. You can now go as you were, Gladys. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And now that you're mentioning it, I'm remembering that part of what I was helping to, like, I guess another reframe is when we think about productivity, that a lot of times we think about productivity as doing the thing that we said we would do, sitting down and writing or achieving our goals, right? But I was trying to bring in another form of productivity, which is cultivating a better relationship with your inner critic. That can also be very productive, because our inner critic, or that category of parts within us that use shame and scolding as a way of trying to motivate us, or a way of trying to get us to do a better job or make sure that we're not disappointing people, all good things. But the way that they do it is very abusive, very harsh, and demotivating ultimately. And it undermines us more than it helps us. And so by redefining or cultivating a different relationship with those parts, actually, I would say is one of the most productive things you can do with your time. So if those parts come up while you're trying to achieve your goals, you might be tempted to just push them aside or shout them down or avoid them, or maybe not do your task because you can't bear the brunt of your own inner critic voice, as you try to do these activities, to actually stop trying to achieve your goal or stop trying to do the primary activity and actually turn towards your part and use the time and the energy that you have to actually see if you can shift that relationship. Once you do that, then most of the time, I think you'll notice you're much more effective when you then return to your primary activity.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for sure.
And I know that you work with coffee achievers, hyper achievers, right? By and large.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the problems that they sort of lay at your feet or explain to you, like where they are, what they're afraid of? And then, are they all technologists, or are there people in other industries? What are their biggest fears? And also, if you ever hear about it, what are their biggest hopes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has actually changed over the years because my view of what's healthy has really changed. So before, I might have said, yeah, like anybody who's putting work first or not having healthy balance between work and life, or doesn't have a personal life, or, lacks certain, what I would consider, building blocks of life, like maybe they lack community, or they lack a relationship, or they lack recreation in their life. I would have thought of those people as, maybe in need of some support in terms of becoming more healthy in their life. But over time, I've actually shifted to thinking about health, or I don't want to say health, but thinking about thriving in a different way, where you can actually be like really fixated on your work and really, maybe even obsessed with your work. And as long as it's your choice, as long as you are clear about the cost and you are accepting of that, and you're accepting responsibility for that, and you're going in clear-eyed about the kind of life you're living, then I don't see really any issue with somebody behaving in ways that I might have previously thought was like being a workaholic. I think people go through different phases of life where they're focused on different things. And when I encounter people who are perhaps in a phase of life where they are fully aware that they're leaving some parts of themselves on the table in service of achieving a certain goal that they find really meaningful, I'm there, there's no longer a part of me that really sees that as a problem, or thinks that, that should be different in any way. So yeah, I think I'm shifting a little bit around that. And I think it comes back to, again, like at choice. Are you at choice? Are you choosing your life, or are you allowing life to be chosen for you? And the reason that a lot of overachievers, burned out overachievers, tend to, the general problem that I feel like they're facing is that they feel very trapped in their work situation or in their reality, where they can't figure out a way to make a change. They have no energy at the end of the day. They feel like they are at their limit in terms of what they can give. And so all they can do is just the motions that they're used to, and showing up to work and just being on kind of running on fumes and putting out fires and just go until they just pass out, at the end of the day. That's not a life where you're really at choice, where you're really choosing it. You're not really, you're not at the steering, you're not at the wheel of your own life, So I feel like that's the most common problem. It's not so much that they're a high achiever, or that they're working a lot, or that they're, putting work first. That's not really, if that's what you value, if that's what brings you meaning, and that's your mission in life right now, I think there's something beautiful to that. I don't see anything wrong with that.
That's interesting to me, how your thoughts around it have evolved over time.
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with my own experiences, because having two kids, the way I'm choosing to be a parent, I know that like I could choose to work full time and put the kids in childcare full time and just separate my life very clearly in that way. But I choose to work part time and not put the kids in childcare part time. And so there's a lot more time that I get to have with them. I choose to do that, but that also means that my number one priority in life is not my work anymore. Mm-hmm. My number one priority in life is not like engaging in conscious personal and spiritual growth every day. You know,
Right.
sometimes I'm just wanting to like make sure that I'm emotionally regulated for my kids. You know, that's my goal sometimes, right? So it's not necessarily that I'm always striving towards some kind of personal growth, which I used to be doing all the time.
Right.
Because my own focus has changed. It's like, I get it. I get how like different phases of life bring different priorities, and sometimes it doesn't match what you thought you valued in the past.
Before we dive into the topic of coaching and AI, I want to share this hilarious bit by Bay Area comedian Andrew Orolfo. Enjoy.
How's this room feel about AI? Anyone who's scared? Raise your hand if you're scared. Oh, it's so nice to see a white person scared for once. Who knew it'd take robots? Anybody here think it's gonna be like Terminator? Okay. You do? Okay. Here's why I'm not worried about AI. Because if you believe that AI can become sentient and get mad and try to take over the world, then you also have to believe that AI can just be sad and want to stay in the house. We don't know. AI can hop out and be like, damn, Earth a little dangerous. I'm going to stay in the computer where it's safe. Because if AI hops out and it becomes anything like us, it's going to get depressed. And honestly, AI might just kill itself. And that's how we win. We could take on a sad AI. That doesn't feel that difficult. Everyone in here, we could bully an AI into killing itself. I don't think it'd be that hard. And here's how we do it. We just get on TikTok, and then we start commenting, hey, your art fucking sucks. Your art sucks and you draw hands weird, idiot. Stay in the computer. Y'all were so much fun. Thank you so much. Bye.
Now, back to the show.
So I think for the coaching sessions, it's like, typically I do offer recordings to my clients that they can go back and rewatch the session. But most of my clients don't ask for that. So what happens in the session just happens. And then what they take away is literally the notes that they wrote down, the memory that they have of the session, and my notes, if there are any, so that's all that's left over from the session. Whereas if I use this note taker, there's this very formal and professional sounding summary that it outputs. And it almost is so definitive that it defines like what actually happened in the session. Like I've noticed that when I can read the summary, on one hand, I'm like, wow, like you got all that from our conversation. It's all accurate, like pretty accurate. But the way it's written is very professional.
Right.
It becomes a heavy hand in actually defining what the session was about. So I'm still seeing whether I like that or not. So far, it's mostly just been like an exploration and experiment.
Yeah.
It's different.
It is different. I've been using ChatGPT a bit for copywriting. I always edit it down. I mean, and sometimes it gives me what I want. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes a little while. But sometimes, a lot of the time it sparks ideas. And I love that. I love that about it. But what you're just saying, it, makes me think of AI and coaching, counseling, when it actually comes to the human psyche. But AI is probably taking what we're talking about right now and integrating it into the mulch, right, of information. So, we could be spewing complete bullshit. Like we could be saying, oh yeah, well, all you have to do, if you want to, feel less depressed is, water your plant. I mean, you just don't know what it's picking up and what it's going to do with all of that. And also the anonymity portion. I've heard of people like counselors not using their clients' real names. or people's real names, just so when people go to Google them or whatever, that's not all coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a lot of money going into AI therapy and coaching, and there are actual very famous coaches that have spent years creating content, writing blog,
Right.
Podcasts, all these things. And they've basically fed all of that into their own personal AI, which you can now subscribe to. You can pay them a monthly fee,
Oh.
a AI version of them. And so you can kind of, instead of paying like $1,000 a session that you might for like a really famous coach, you can pay like $1 a month and get access to unlimited access to like a shell of them, or whatever.
Right.
And I imagine that does satisfy some people's desire to actually work with this coach. But
Mm-hmm.
the reason that's valuable is because they built a relationship with this coach.
Correct.
If it's not personal, it's still a human being that you're wanting to relate to and that you're imagining you're relating to, versus a pure app or a pure robot that is there pretending they're a human, but there's no actual human that you're even imagining that you're relating.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit different. And the way that I think about coaching now with versus AI, I mean, I don't really orient my coaching all around like, how do I differentiate myself from AI, right? I don't really think about it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
But when I really think about like, well, someone might actually opt to pay a really low price my coach versus work with me, the differentiator is when a client is working with me, there's a relationship that's being built, right?
Yes.
Different facets of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Them obviously is the most coachy, which is like kind of like optimistic cheerleading, sort of like reflecting your strengths and helping you strategize actions and then helping hold you accountable, right? That's like this kind of superficial coaching level.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's just like kind of relationship that's really challenging. So it's leveraging our very natural need for approval in someone else. I think especially with my clients, it's like a lot of them are people pleasers, and so there is a strong impulse that they have to do a good job and also to satisfy a certain expectation that I might have, right? Now, I'm not their parents, I'm not their boss, right? So my expectations are purely about what they say that they want for themselves. And so I get to actually leverage that relational tension to challenge them, kind of skirt on that line of like approval, disapproval of their own goals. And I just don't know if AI can do that, right? I don't know if AI, because of how anonymous, because of how it's not a real person, right? I just don't know how much AI can create the feeling of, oh, wow, I'm really going to disappoint this person. Or generate that kind of motivation that's like, or risks the relationship in challenging somebody.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I put that very well.
No, I understand what you're saying.
I would hate to, like I wouldn't say I use approval as a cudgel, I'm not like, but it's a kind of a subtle thing that I think only a person can do, right? Only a person can show how another person's sharing is impacting them.
Right.
Somebody's sharing something that I can tell they're disappointed in themselves. I can hear that disappointment and be like, really though? Is that really, like, I just don't see it, I'm not seeing you actually doing what you say you want to do, right? There's a kind of reflecting that I can do that's much more challenging than an AI could ever.
Right. I know that with certain AI models, for example, like maybe, ChatGPT Pro, you can teach it to learn your tone of voice, right? How you speak regularly. It can mimic all of that, so that when it comes to writing, let's say, a blog post, or just any kind of post, or any kind of report or or piece of correspondence, email, whatever, that it can completely mirror your tone, the way you speak, the words you use, all of that. And I don't know if these, online or the AI models for therapy are trainable in that way. It would seem like it would be really helpful and eerie because, not every therapist is like, hey, how are you today? Let's begin. That's not, or let's get started, right? That's not how real people talk.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And I think the input, at least for now, of AI is purely verbal, whereas a human being can pick up so much more. Like I'm constantly reading my client's energy. What is their energy level when they talk about this or that? And I reflect that back to them and I say, hey, did you notice that when you were talking about this, your energy totally shifted? And energy is very abstract. It's not something that you can measure. It's not something that, well, at least the way I'm using the word energy, something you can just, it's like an intuitive sense that you're getting from energy has shifted or their energy is doing this or that. And it's kind of artsy language that no one can disprove, but
it's nonverbal communication. A lot of the way we communicate every hour and every minute is nonverbal.
Exactly. Yeah.
For example, I remember we had a conversation once about your coaching business is to help burned out professionals find perhaps new direction or clarify their path forward. And you had talked to me in the past about a lot of professionals at very famous tech companies. You said to me, it's a great deal of unhappiness going on, either familial obligation because maybe the employee that you're talking to, parents back in maybe India, for example, had put all of their eggs in this basket for this kid to be the one in the family who succeeds. And they feel like there's no way out of that once they achieve something like a big role at company, blah, blah.
Right.
And that the competitive nature of it all. Are you still working in this way? Tell me how employees out there are feeling these days with the advances in tech and how they fit in, how it's burning them out.
So there was a period where I was coaching people from these companies a lot because I was working for a company that contracted out coaching services to big companies. And so I was much more tapped into that back then. Nowadays, I'm not coaching only tech people. And my most frequent contact with the tech world is, so I still teach UX design, and I also mentor UX designers through a boot camp. So that's more insight that I have is obviously I still have friends working in tech. So that is one source of information I get, but the other is people who are actually more trying to get into tech. So the attitudes of people who are trying to get into tech or who have just started their career in tech.
What are some of the concerns that you hear?
Well, definitely in the design world, it's around AI. There's a big change that everyone's anticipating around AI coming in to take over the kind of design work that the junior designer might do. Junior designers are, they're not making a lot of actual decisions in the product. They're doing more of the grunt work, so to speak, of constructing screens, using the design system to create screens. And they're not necessarily even designing their own custom components or anything. They're just literally Lego block building their screens. And because so much of digital design, digital interface design is becoming more and more standardized, it's becoming a lot easier for something like AI, even in its nascent form right now, to put together really good looking screens that satisfy business metrics, that satisfy user needs, that obey all of the heuristics and are totally clean and perfect, pixel perfect, and it's so much faster than a junior designer would be and not error prone like a junior designer is. So I could see how when I work with design students and, people who are ready to apply for jobs, I I struggle a little bit with myself in terms of how to properly prepare them for that. I don't know if I can even prepare them for that. And I think my general approach has been like the fundamentals of design and design philosophy itself, and also design ethics, are things that human beings should still do and should be like squarely within the realm of like a human making these decisions. Whereas the AI, yeah, maybe it can do some of the grunt work, but at least the ethos of a product or the ethos of a experience that's being designed should come from people, and then maybe the AI can execute. And so I do tend to emphasize in my courses and, you know, in my coaching with design students is like really master like the fundamentals of design thinking, decision making, storytelling, and being able to understand user needs. But it's a contradiction because the job market right now for junior designers is so tough because of all the tech recent layoffs, and, you know, just in general, the tech industry is like shrinking a bit. And so the designers that tend to get the most opportunities are ones that have really beautiful looking interface designs. They have beautiful websites, beautiful mock-ups, because visually that's what designers and hiring managers and companies, like, they expect from their designers. But what then gets overshadowed is their critical thinking skills, their soft skills, you know, things that don't always translate into how someone designs their particular mock-ups.
Right.
So there's some good talent that's being overlooked or not even being considered because of the dominance of needing to have this like beautifully visual, you know, facade, basically, which it can just replicate really easily, you know? So there's a little bit of contradiction, and it's like almost like I can see two trains like coming into collide with each other, which is like AI, the ease of like creating really beautiful visuals, with all of the new designers' fixation and energy being placed into making beautiful visuals. It's like, what's going to happen with all that effort and energy that collectively all these junior designers have been obsessing with and like really pouring their hearts and minds into, when ultimately that might be taken away, you know? So I guess I don't really know the answer to that. And everyone says like the best way to differentiate yourself from AI or to hedge yourself against AI is to just be a great critical thinker, be a good storyteller, be a good facilitator, leader, manager. But all of these roles are ones that like you get to after you graduate from being a junior designer. So I just don't see a real place in the future UX industry or workplace for junior designers. And that's concerning to me, you know.
Are these AI apps not taking into account human behavior and emotions?
Even without AI, tech has already been manipulating us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I feel like there seems to be a fork in the road in terms of companies or designers making conscious decision to either lean into, I don't want to say manipulation necessarily, but it's like lean into everything that technology has to offer to engage the user, to really get them sucked in and loyal to their brand or to their app, and really get them using this app like multiple times a day, you know, as long as possible. I think there's designers going that way, and then I think there's designers going the other direction of how do we actually bring the human back into the equation, where the human has more choice in the matter of the relationship between they have with the app.
More agency.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's where it overlaps with my work as a coach, because I feel like as a coach, my job, one of my primary like jobs with a client is to like help them see that they have choice in any situation that they're in, and help them see what the choices that they have in front of them. And with tech, a lot of choices that we have are taken away from us in a lot of ways, where like if we can't help but check our phones or check our social media accounts or whatever it is, then we're not really at choice when we interact with our technology. And so in my own personal usage, I try to be at choice with everything that I'm doing with my phone. Now, I don't always succeed. Like, I definitely do impulse check my phone and all these things, but I try to like keep it on do not disturb or turn off my notifications and just try to make sure that like when I look at my phone, it's because I chose to, not because it forced me to or tricked me to. Another way of thinking about my technology that's changed over the years is that I'm much more conscious of like the algorithm. So the algorithm used to operate in the background. We never really knew what it was doing. And all we knew was that we were entering more and more into these like filter bubbles, and we were becoming more divided. And, you know, we were like entering into these echo chambers. And so we had a sense that like there was some algorithm at play influencing what we saw, right? But now I'm much more conscious of how to actually tend my own algorithms so that I am getting what I actually want. You know, so one example is with YouTube. With YouTube, your risk of ending up somewhere extreme is really high because the more recommended videos you click on, the deeper you go into the rabbit hole, and then you end up consuming really extreme content that like, you know, just gets reaction out of you and therefore gets you addicted. But the way I've tried to hedge that is like, or, you know, prevent that is like every once in a while, I'll delete my entire watch history or, you know, everything, right? And that will kind of reset my algorithm. And I'm very conscious that that's what I'm doing. I'm resetting my algorithm. I'm kind of clearing out all of the old data, and then I'm refreshing it, almost like refreshing a web page, you know, or restarting my computer or whatever. I'm just starting afresh. It's helping me to just keep in mind that there is this thing I need to pay attention to, this algorithm that I need to take care of and cultivate and keep clean and maintain, you know, so that my mind can be clean and maintained. And, you know, and another thing I've also done is I'll just completely turn off all algorithmically based recommendations from YouTube. So when I open my YouTube, there is literally no videos, right? Videos all, and I have to actually search for something in order to get videos. So that has helped me not get sucked into things that I don't want to look at. I go to YouTube with a goal of what I want to look for, and then I just search for it. And I find it and I watch it. So yeah, that's something I've learned is like, we all need to, I think, gain better algorithmic literacy, I guess is the word. Obviously, AI literacy is important, but I think even more basic is algorithmic literacy, where we understand what the algorithms are doing, even if we don't understand all the technology behind it, but just that we need to occasionally clear out what we did in the past so that we can have a chance of seeing new things in our recommendations, you know?
As you were talking, I was thinking maybe a way to describe it is digital hygiene.
Yeah.
My boyfriend and I have started clearing the history on YouTube. We do it, well, I do it now almost every day because there's all this stuff. It's crazy. You know, I like to look at all different, for example, political points of view, right? Like, because I believe in civil discourse. I believe that we have more in common. Yeah. So I'm looking at this side, I'm looking at that side. And within a day, it is so extreme on either side that it's like, this is the exact opposite of what I was hoping to achieve on YouTube. So I just clear it all out and just start over. Like you said, just actually search it. Let's take a quick moment to unwind together. Find a comfy spot. And as you listen, let's shift focus from our screens to a little mental reset. So if you're driving, feel free to revisit this episode section later, or safely pull over if you'd like to join me now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and out. Imagine you're in a peaceful place, maybe a favorite spot or somewhere you'd love to visit. Picture yourself there and enjoy a brief mental escape. What sounds can you hear around you? Maybe it's the sound of gentle waves, or birds chirping, or simple quietness. Take a moment to notice the colors around you. What shades do you see? Are they vibrant or soft? Can you feel the ground beneath your feet? the texture of the sand or grass. If there's a scent in the air, like flowers, fresh rain, or salty ocean breezes, take it in for a moment and check in with yourself. How does it make you feel? As you hold on to that feeling of gratitude, focus on your breath. Notice how it feels as you breathe in slowly and let any tension melt away as you exhale. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more grounded, more present in this moment. Now, as you feel more connected to your breath and your gratitude, think about one small thing you can do today to bring this calm into your digital world, whether it's stepping away from the screen for a few minutes or setting a mindful intention before you scroll. Whatever it is, commit to that one act of balance. As you hold on to this calm, know that you're still with us on Digital Sanity, a moment that is especially dedicated to you. Slowly open your eyes. How do you feel? I feel fantastic. So much better. I like to write down my meditation sessions and visit them to remind myself of those things that brought me joy and find ways to intentionally create more with the people I love. So when you have a moment to write down your visualization, we can revisit these thoughts in future episodes. Thank you for sharing this moment with me and the Digital Sanity community. We'll continue with more tips and insights to help you balance your digital life. Now, back to the show. Technology has gotten kind of sucky on a lot of levels. For example, I don't feel like YouTube is what it used to be. And I've noticed over the last month or so, it's even suckier. And I think that may be because AI is being folded into the recipe here a little bit more. And I feel that way with a lot of other technologies that I use that are algorithmic. It just seems like it's AI on steroids sometimes. And I don't know, does it seem to you like in a lot of ways technology is getting suckier?
I mean, I don't know about the technology in general, but I do think content creation is kind of going through a really rough time right now with the AI content flooding into the internet, AI blog posts, AI videos, AI, all kinds of stuff flooding into the internet. Also, more and more people creating content, more and more young people saying that they want to be an influencer when they grow up, that being a viable career choice. It's really seeped into our culture and our consciousness that like content creation is something that is a productive use of your time, that it's somehow valuable. And everyone I know, pretty much including myself, has created content, has their own YouTube channel, has a blog, whatever, right? And it's something that I feel like if you're not doing it, you're somehow out of the loop, or you're missing out on something, right? So I do think that there's just content creation in general is such a core part of being a digital person. But then on top of that, there's people who have really mastered the game of content creation. And by mastering, I'm not saying that they're creating great content. I'm saying they're mastered the ability to get your clicks, to get you to look at what they're trying to show you, and get you to actually like subscribe or like or comments or whatever the engagement metrics are that they're trying to optimize. And that's where you get these thumbnails that just look ridiculous, or clickbaity titles and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I think again, like AI could probably do better than us at optimizing those metrics, but is it really valuable content? Like, no, it's
Right.
not. So I think like we all like, at least for me, I know that I have to be much more discerning about who I subscribe to or who I watch. Even something as simple as, like, right now we're doing kitchen renovation. So I'm going to learn about appliances, which brands are reliable, which products are good and bad, and blah, blah, blah. And even in that realm, there's tons of videos made by, I don't even know if they're people, but they're just videos where it's just a bunch of marketing. It's just a bunch of empty words. It's just a bunch of graphics and, commercials and things like that patched together. And the title of the video is something like, you must watch this before you buy a refrigerator or something like that. And then I click on it and it's like, I'm not learning a thing, So I think I have needed to become much more discerning and reading between the lines, looking at the comments before I even watched a video, or seeing if it's an actual human being that's talking or that's giving their perspective. So yeah, I guess I feel like it's part of the literacy. It's part of the algorithmic literacy. It's like, don't fall for it. Don't feed into your algorithm being mucked up and full of junk, because it happens really quickly. Within a few clicks, your algorithm can be completely just destroyed, like completely.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day. I was looking for legal copyright information, and I thought I was going to get helped by this one video. It had the perfect, title for me and everything. I learned a lot about nothing except you want me to buy your stuff. And I think what I would like to talk about is solutions, how to chill out, how to pace yourself.
I definitely think the top takeaway is, as much as possible, being at choice in your life. And that could be in a macro level of big life decisions that you make, making sure that you're making them consciously and according to the values that you understand, that things that you value in life. But on a micro level, it's the day-to-day. Choose to spend this much time on my phone? Did I choose to look at my phone right now? Is my phone or my technology taking my choice away from me? And if so, how can I change that? How can I make it so that I get to choose when I engage with my technology? Another one is treating your attention like the same way you would treat money, for example, like another, limited resource. It's like there's a cost to allowing technology to make choices for you and how you spend your attention. And just like when you spend your money, you tend to accumulate a bunch of stuff in your house, let's say. And one day you might look at all this stuff and be like, I don't want any of this crap. I actually don't like any of this stuff that I just bought. Same thing with your attention, where you might wake up one day and think, I don't like how my mind is working. I don't like the things that I tend to be thinking about, or the clutter that's built up in my mind. I think because you've paid your attention to certain things that you didn't choose to, it can fill your mind with clutter that you didn't want to be there. So taking out the garbage, so to speak, making sure you are cleaning out your algorithms and making sure that what you consume is actually what you want and what you value.
There are businesses and business models out there, but the goal is extracting your
Yes.
It's an extraction model. It's extracting your attention as often as possible.
Yeah.
They want you to have that dopamine buzz, and on and on and on and on and on. When you pull up any kind of, let's just say, pull up a website. How many pop-ups? How many this? How many that? How many videos that lead to this YouTube thing? Then over there, and da-da-da. I know from experience that a person can spend all day.
Yeah.
All day online. Or feeling like something wrong, something bad's going to happen if you forget your phone. You're out and about. That feeling that's been, I think, generated in people, like, if I don't have my phone, something really awful is going to happen. Someone's going to be in a car accident and I'm not going to know. And so it's a thing that's definitely it's a blanket, a security blanket of some kind. Any way you slice it, it's extractive. And they're getting our attention for free. And we're paying them to take our attention away from our 3D lives, honestly.
Yeah, there's definitely like so much to critique there, around like we're losing our humanity. We should be like detoxing, from our digital devices. And I think just keeping in mind that, like you said, as the average user, as the consumer of digital technology, you're up against giants in terms of how skillful these companies are at getting your eyeballs, getting your attention and your energy. And so it's a lot to expect that you'll be able to fully control yourself or fully prevent yourself from having days where you don't even know where the time went. You just spent it all day on YouTube, or you went on LinkedIn to look at one thing and suddenly you find yourself 30 minutes later still scrolling on it. Like that, these aren't your fault. So really making sure you're not, I guess, being too hard on yourself in terms of how much you look at your phone and all of that. In the parenting world, this is a huge area of concern for a lot of parents, and it's a source of shame as well for parents, and fear of judgment where, oh my God, I look at my phone a lot. My kid is going to become addicted to their phone, or other parents are going to judge me for how much I use my phone or whatever. And I just want to acknowledge that these multi-billion-dollar companies, they know that you're susceptible, and they are masters at manipulation to get you to use their products. So you're not going to win. You're just not. It's just well understood that, well, when I teach designers, I teach them how to be human-centered, how to be empathetic to the user, how to solve problems that real people have using technology, right? That's the best part of design, is like creative problem solving. Mm-hmm. But I can't ignore that once a student becomes a professional in the tech industry, in the design industry, the user's needs really do come secondary to the business needs. That right at the center of every design decision you will make is the business goal, the business metrics, and the business needs. Even so far as to when you need to defend your design decisions to stakeholders at your company, designers even have to learn how to use business speak, how to validate their designs using business metrics in order to even be heard. So that is the extent to which business goals and metrics have co-opted and kind of taken over what started as a really beautiful design philosophy of being human-centered.
Right.
So knowing that every product you touch that is made from one of these billion-dollar companies or that is highly successful, they've mastered the art of fulfilling business needs and business metrics. It's not that they've mastered the art of fulfilling your user needs. It's that they have mastered business needs. So just keeping that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. And going back to your course again, one of my favorite parts of that process of creating an app that will an app that serves an actual human need, not creating one, right? But one of my favorite aspects of what you taught was the whole ethics aspect. Mm-hmm. And thinking like, okay, with this app, with this product, what potential partners might you bring in to help you manifest this and participate? Do you align with those people, though? Do your ethics align with what they represent and what they actually do? And, I really, I took so much away from your course, but that kernel, I constantly bring that back to my decision-making with multiple things. That ethical component is so important. And I know that, these days, especially now, a lot of companies it's just part of the charade, right, we believe in humanity, we're doing this to make the world a better place, this and that. But it's so cynical because they're just,
Yeah.
they're trying to look a certain way, speak a certain speak. Yeah, does the average designer, does anybody stand a chance who's creating these things?
I think yes and no. Like, I think collectively designers can choose to work for leaders and companies that they align with ethically. Whether or not they truly know what the ethics and values are of their leaders is another question, but at least they can align themselves to espoused values and ethics. But there's always going to be a class of designers who are just looking for a job. Like, they just need work and they've invested in this education. They want to make good on that investment. And so they will take whatever job is going to pay them. And that also comes with doing work that they're told to do, regardless of their personal feelings, and I think that's just the reality of some of the job right now. Yeah. It's kind of a little bit of a luxury to turn down a job because of your ethics, and so I'm not kidding myself in thinking that every designer should put that first, but it comes back to this theme of choice. So the hardest time that a designer might have is when they come out of school or some kind of educational experience where they learn all of this great philosophy and theory about design and how powerful it can be to make the world a better place. And then they enter the job market, or they enter into their first role in their company in the industry, and they realize that it's really not about that at all. It's really only about business goals. And to the extent that business goals align with user goals, like, that's great, right? Obviously, every well-meaning person wants there to be an overlap and wants the overlap to be as large as possible. But if there are ever parts that don't overlap, the side that gets chosen is always going to be the business goal side. So I think that fall from grace or that disillusionment can sometimes really hurt a designer's sense of self and their sense of right and wrong, and it can cause some moral injury down the line if they continue to do work that they disagree with. So there is risk of people who get attracted to this type of work are generally creatives. They're generally people who really care about people. They are people who want to make an impact that's positive in the world. And so there's that attraction to the design field, but then the reality of the field is really different from that. And sometimes I do see that soul crushing that can happen when, designers who come in with that idealism enter into the job and they realize it's really not about that at all. And their idealism is not even valued, right? It's not even seen as a plus. It's seen as a liability. It's seen as an inconvenience. So that's really hard. Again, if you're aware of that, if you're aware of the realities of the design industry and you go into it knowing that you can't really expect to always allow your ethics to come first or always have the user's needs come first, and you are still willing to do the job while maybe finding your own way of seeking that kind of fulfillment through little decisions that you can maybe make as a designer, but ultimately understanding and accepting that this is the reality of the industry right now. I think that you can still go into this work and get what you're seeking, and it still just comes down to making that conscious choice and just knowing that this is what you're walking into, this is the reality of it.
Do you have any advice or words of hope for kids? Like, let's just say Gen Alpha.
This is a message I hope more and more kids start to have, or this kind of attitude is being on your phone is really, really boring. It's not fun at all. And it makes you into a very uninteresting and uncool person. That's what I want kids to think is like, so when you're with a bunch of your friends and they're all on their phones, just think about how uncool that is. Like, just how lame they're being by just being on their phones. Yeah. That's my wish, is that it just becomes so uncool. Kind of like smoking cigarettes or something, which I guess kids think that's cool, but.
Right.
But like, maybe, hopefully when they see their parents are so addicted to their phones and they associate phones with parents being annoying and boring and not giving them attention,
Yes.
they'll reject it for themselves.
Yes, exactly. Okay, how about students, like kids, going into college?
Start with the fundamentals. Don't get too seduced by all of the latest technologies and all of the trends that are happening. Use your education and the time in college or grad school to really solidify who you are as a person, to understand your personal philosophy and ethics around life, how you want to live it, the subjects that fascinate you, and learn how to think. That's your focus in college. It's not trying to act like you're a product designer working at Apple. Like, don't try to pretend like you're that. Get some substance first, learn about who you are, learn deeply about philosophy or just how you want to approach life. The trends and all this sexy tech and all that will always be changing, and there's always going to be some new thing, but it's the way that you engage with it is what's most important.
That's brilliant. I love that. And then for parents.
I mean, the caveat is like, I've only, parented up to like a 5-year-old kid. So obviously there's so much more of being a parent that I don't know. I could say definitively, stop giving your kids your phone. Stop giving your kids tablets and phones and using those devices as babysitters. I mean, a lot of times I see parents giving their kids phones and tablets when they're out at restaurants or out shopping at grocery stores, doing things where parents just want to do the activity in peace. They don't want their kids to be asking them for attention or bothering them or creating disruption, right? But the way I hear parents talk about it is that, their kid needs this. Mm-hmm. They need this in order to get through a meal. They need this in order to get through the grocery store. But let's not get twisted, right? It's actually your own needs. Your need for peace and serenity and focus and comfort. That's what's really driving you giving the phone, right? It's not, your kids don't need it. Your kids are allowed to be needy and disruptive and pesky at the dinner table. They are allowed to be that way. And it's like asking yourself, are you giving them the device because you really think they need it, or because you are uncomfortable with how they will be without it? And you can't tolerate their behavior when you're trying to do something when they're not, like, basically looking at a screen.
I mean, part of, I think, the act of sitting down and sharing a meal, that's, to me, pro-civilization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's how you learn about other people. You look at people in the eye. You let people talk. You learn how not to talk with your mouth full. All that stuff that seems so boring and old-fashioned, I suppose, that is really important to human communication. I believe that that's really foundational. The mealtime is foundational.
Yeah.
To have that very important act of eating together co-opted by technology, that is really, really sad to me. And also, as a parent, it's good to learn how to, I hate to use the word discipline, but how to correct your children when they are being butt heads at a restaurant. You're teaching them something. What you're teaching them now is to, I think, with this thing you're talking about, is to disengage. It's a way to disassociate, for sure. Mm-hmm. And just not really be where you are in 3D in the moment. And this is going to be really the norm going forward.
Yeah.
And one thing, this is sort of a little bit tangential, but for example, I've been consciously leaving my phone at home or in my purse. When I'm waiting in queue for something, I won't bring out my phone. It's a very conscious decision now because I need to become comfortable again with just standing there and waiting my turn, and looking around and looking at other people or smiling at people, I look like a lunatic because everybody else is on the phone and everything. They're probably wondering, why is this like, what is she having a problem? Like what?
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying there. I agree.
Yeah. It's like so much of our parenting choices come out of trying to help our kids cope with discomfort, the pain of being alive, the pain of being sick, the pain of being bored, the pain of being in new environments that they've never been in that are loud and chaotic and kind of scary. And their discomfort makes us uncomfortable because we have to ultimately deal with their behavior when they're uncomfortable, which is almost always something that we don't want them to be doing. And if we cope with our own discomfort by giving them a device, it's not really addressing the actual discomfort. You're not addressing your own discomfort. Your kid is not able to build up tolerance for their discomfort. And it's creating like codependency and dependency. And, ultimately it's not going to help either of you become better parents or for the kid to become a better human.
What about elders? Because there is a digital divide. A lot of elders drop out, all right? Like my dad got rid of his iPhone. Well, he was a completely different generation altogether. He was a depression baby, right?
Yeah.
But older people are still getting scammed. And you know how it goes. Elders are made to feel completely irrelevant. And true, the boomers are the last ones left with any kind of generational wealth. So they've got some pocket money. But it just feels like tech is equated with being young and sexy and rich. So what would you say to an elder person about tech, about having hope, about how to engage or just not engage?
Just saying elders, right? It's like within that population, there's so many different kinds of people. I mean, there's like every kind of person.
Yeah.
So like everybody gets old. So there's like every kind of person in that category.
Yes. Good point.
But one thing that's coming up for me is, I'm 41. So I wouldn't consider myself an elder, but I definitely don't consider myself like a young person anymore. And I noticed that I also noticed myself resisting adopting new technologies. And so I wondered to myself, is this when the gap starts to grow? Is when I stop downloading new apps or trying out new devices or trying new technologies? Like this is when I start to deviate from what my kids will be engaged in. And this is when I start to become out of touch. And this is when I start to feel like the world is moving too fast and I can't keep up. And then it just makes me want to avoid even more. So I mean, I don't really have much advice except that I feel it too. I feel it coming and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about it because I don't have the motivation to dive into all these new technologies. I'm just not that interested. I find that what I have works just fine. So yeah, I mean, one thing I think I'll say is the speed of technological development is speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
And so the age at which I think people will start to feel this, like I'm out of touch, I think that's going to get smaller and smaller. I think the age of that experience will slowly inch downwards because of how quickly technology is evolving. And so if consider yourself an elder and you're only now starting to feel that, kudos to you. Like I'm already feeling it and I'm 41. So if you're like 65 and you're only now starting to feel that, like, wow, I'm actually impressed by that.
Right.
I'm afraid of how out of touch I will be by the time I'm an elder, given how quickly technology is evolving now. I guess when I think about elders who struggle with technology today, there's so many core life functions that technology enables that elder people struggle with. If you can't check your email, you can barely do anything in life, right now. So I'm afraid of something like that happening where I'm shut out of really fundamental pieces of functioning in society administratively in my life because I don't know how to use certain technology. So I'm afraid of losing that autonomy, that agency, and just that sense of control that comes with, knowing how to use tech. And if there's anything that would motivate me to, I think, try to get on board with some of these things, it's that. It's the fear of not being able to live. Yeah, it's the fear of it affecting my quality of life.
Yeah, and your independence, living independently.
Yes, yeah, independence, yeah.
So now I want to know, Eddie, are there any podcasts that you particularly like and recommend? Are there books that you like and recommend? Websites? Any of that stuff?
There's a podcast called Your Undivided Attention, which is, it's a really great podcast. His name is Tristan.
I think I know what you're talking about. Oh, he's with the Center for Humane Technology.
Yes, he founded that.
Tristan Harris. Oh, I am
Yes.
so on board with what they are doing. I applied for a job as a ghostwriter for them. And I made my resume algorithmically fantastic and perfect for them. That the position I went in, boom, closed. Okay. I really believe in their mission. Have you ever gone on their site, taken any of their modules?
No, I haven't taken any modules, but I've gone on their site.
Fantastic. It's free, by the way. It's Center for Humane Technology. Anyway, Tristan Harris, Your Undivided.
Yes, Tristan Harris. His podcast is great. He is super thoughtful, and he brings on guests that think really deeply about technology and have a lot of insight into not just consumer technology, but also enterprise technology and technology used in governments internationally as well. So there's just a lot more insight that they can provide about the impact of technology on human life.
Yes.
That I find really fascinating and just mind-opening. Another one is the Ezra Klein Show. So I don't listen to this show all the time, but the few episodes that the show has had guests that talk about AI, I found really helped me understand what AI is capable of right now without needing to actually use it myself.
Okay.
So I thought that the few conversations that Ezra Klein has had about AI really illuminated to me what's at the cutting edge of what AI can do, and framing it in a way that non-technology people or people who don't understand the technology can understand really well. Well, one app that I really like is called Ground News. It's a news aggregating app that pulls news from different sources, and they will show you whether the news topic is covered only on the left or only on the right, like left-leaning papers versus right-leaning news sources. It will show you the breakdown of how many of these news sources are reporting on this topic and reveal to you some of the left-leaning or right-leaning biases that are blind spots that you might have. And it'll also allow you to swipe between different headlines that, either left-leaning or right-leaning news sources might publish to get a sense of how is each side kind of spinning the story to their benefit. And it helps me have a source of news that I feel like I can trust just because I'm able to see the entire spectrum of news sources. So I don't trust necessarily one single news source, but I think if I'm able to see all of it, I can trust my own interpretation of what's happening. So that's one app that I use and I enjoy.
That sounds empowering. And how would you describe yourself, Eddie? Would you say that you're a technologist and coach? I consider you to be a technologist. Do you?
I don't really know what that means. I mean, I guess I don't really think I'm not really engaged in building technology. I'm more focused on people, developing people through educating or coaching or parenting. I think my focus is really centered on human development. But that said, I do love design as a topic and as a subject, and I do still identify as a designer, even though I'm not doing hands-on design anymore. And so because of that, I am interested in the ways that design is impacting our life. And because so much of what's impacting our life are these digital products, that does lead me to be interested in what's going on in that realm. So yeah, I do think I'm interested in technology insofar as it's impacting people and their development.
Eddie, thank you. Thank you so much. I know that I appreciate what you bring to people's lives and what you've brought to this episode. And I know that other people are better for having known you, knowing you, or having listened to you just now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. For more information about Eddie and a list of his app and podcast recommendations, visit the links provided on our Digital Sanity episode description. Before we wrap up, remember that Digital Sanity is a new wave community media podcast that supports digital literacy, education, mental health, and empowerment. We help you navigate the digital world mindfully, find balance, and stay in charge of your experiences. Be sure to tune in next time for more insights and practical tips to support your journey. Visit us at newwavemedia.org and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at New Wave Community Media. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Jen. Until next time, options control sanity. See you guys.